Okay, team, welcome back. Kate, Guy, Jack, to the podcast. Are you the most north we've ever podcasted to in Australia? Where are we calling in from, team?
Yes. From Australia, yes, we are. We're calling in from lovely Broome at the moment. Pretty 2.5 hours flight north of of Perth. Still in our same state, but 2.5 hours. We get on a plane over the desert.
It's an iconic race, though. It's only Olympic distance. It's been around forever, isn't it? It's real popular. I saw some of the photos that you guys put up. There were heaps of people there. Or am I saying you took really skilled photos?
It's not. I mean, yes, it is popular, but it's more like a weekend. So there's like on Friday night they've got a dash for cash where they put up like $1,000 for a 5K on the beach for the winners of each, like male and female, and then it's 500, 250, and then that's the same prize money for the Olympic on a Sunday, and then on Saturday they've got an open water swim. So there's a lot going on. It's still grassroots, but there's quite a few people that came over to race. So we had a few pros this year, especially on the men's side, come from where's Jared Osborne? Canberra. And Mitch Canberra as well, and then Caleb Noble came up, Matt Burton came up. So yeah, it was actually pretty crazy the caliber of athlete you get at the local Cable Beach Triathlon in Broome.
Okay. How'd you go, Guy? How'd you go?
Well, I want to talk about it. Like, we're here to discuss like things and like the international scene of triathlon. Terrible. I went so terrible. I was like, is this what it feels like? Is tight-chestedness a good thing? I was like, do I need an inhaler? It's pretty hot up here. I don't feel good. I wonder if I could just ride back to the accommodation. Yeah. So it was an emotional experience. I was like, I wonder if Kate's going to catch me. It was a legit concern. But she's in the same fitness boat as me, so...
Yes. We'll have to take, 1 week of training. 1 week of training. We made it. It's all good. Oh, he did have a flat. He rode the last lap on the rim. Let's actually be honest about
he probably punctured it himself.
Yeah, he was on the side of the road with a knife.
Always carry a butter knife with you. You don't even know when it's going to come in handy. Protection, tire punches.
Yeah, well, it does look like it's not winter in your guys' part of the world, and you're enjoying some pretty decent weather. We're rugged up over in this part of the world. I don't know what it's like. It'd be pretty nippy in Auckland at the moment. Tex, did you manage to see the mile world record broken?
I woke up to it. I can't profess to have watched it live, but yes, I did watch it, and it's pretty incredible bit of running, isn't it? It's you don't really get much. Well, you can't get faster than that over a mile, can you? Because he's got the record. But even looking at the splits, it's just like I saw one where they broke it down in like 100-meter segments, and it's just like 13.8, 14, and it's just like consistent, just 100-meter after 100-meter, and like the last couple get a bit faster. And he's obviously got paces to get him up to that speed, but I think they peeled off. Maybe it was 1,000, so he still had to do 600 into the wind. Yeah. And it's in London. He's UK athlete, and like they are just going ballistic for him. It was a pretty awesome experience, and he put it out there in March that he was going to go and do it. So yeah, he talked the talk and he walked the walk, which when you're going after something that hasn't been beaten in 27 years. It's not shabby. Yeah.
Well, it's the mile, it is the 100 meters, the mile, the marathon, 10,000, 5,000. These are huge, huge marquee events, but the mile has that, place.
The blue ribbon.
It's a blue ribbon
running.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not a 100-meter athlete, you're a mile or 15. That's the one you want to watch at the Olympics,
Yeah.
As class.
What I didn't realise, though, that literally, as you've just sort of implied, is all you need is paces. I mean, I didn't realise that, because if it was all you need is paces, I would have had a crack at that mile record a while ago. I would have had Guy lead the first 100, Kate coming in for the second, and Tex, you could run me through to 600 to go. I don't know. Is it? Am I dreaming or what?
I haven't seen you run in a long time, actually, which maybe implies the current state of your running. Even you can't blame it on that dodgy toe surgery anymore. We're well past that.
What if I put it out there? What if I say March next year, I'm going to go?
What could you do? Try and do the fastest mile in March next year. We'll all watch you just after Ironman.
Yeah.
Sub-6.
Yeah, I think I'd probably, I don't drink. So really the beer miles out of my, I don't know. No, I don't think it's going to happen. Oh, is someone coming to see you, Tex? Doors open.
Shit.
On its own.
Do you know what? I don't know if this our little dog that we're dog sitting. He's coming to visit.
Dog sitting, of course.
Yeah. I did wonder how that door opened. One second, caller.
I thought
thankfully. Yeah, so did I initially.
Or maybe mice. Well, it wasn't the only race in town. We did have a Pro Series race over the weekend as well, and it fell at the worst time for us Kiwis. I think with your guys' time zone, it's a little bit more favourable, but really wait to see the results tonight. And Marten Van Riel would have been a relatively strong favourite going in, and so was Paula Findlay. But Paula Findlay's first tilt at the full distance, she did a pretty good job of it, because I think what was most impressive on a course that I don't think is particularly fast. Kate, you've raced Placid, haven't you?
I have raced Placid, yes.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic course.
What is the run course truly like? Because they do, like Marquardt, Van Riel, they've run some pretty handy times there, but it never looks like it's pancake flat.
No, I mean, it's been a while since I've raced there. But no, I don't, like, from what I can remember, it's definitely, the whole run is not flat. You do have like decent climbing coming in and out from the transition area, and you head out and you do a little flat section in the middle before coming back. But just like the bike, like I think both the run and the bike are very quite challenging. I mean, of course, running a marathon is challenging on its own, but it does have that elevation. So to see them run the times that they are running on that course, it's impressive. And it was the last qualifying race for Kona, so we know there was a lot at stake for a lot of the athletes.
Yeah. It actually rolled relatively deep, I think, in the female race, because a number of those athletes were pre-qualified for Kona, but not, obviously, Paula Findlay. She raced in the fashion that I thought she would, but her run at like a 2:55 is a pretty handy debut marathon. It sort of shows us, again, if we hark back to Roth, Alana Siffitt's performance is just, again, mind-blowing as such. But I mean, from a run perspective, Paula Findlay, not sure she's going to deal with the heat and wind of Kona. I don't think she quite likes that as much, but it was a pretty impressive debut, and I'm particularly impressed with her run. What do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I was really impressed. I mean, everyone was talking about how well she was going to do. She's an exceptional athlete. She knows, she said herself, I've been training for this race my entire career. Like, this was always something that she was going to do. But I think the way that she paced herself and the way she held herself together over the marathon was the most impressive. We knew she was going to ride well. The question mark was always going to be on the run. But just watching her form and her technique, even towards the end, it just appeared that she was holding it together really well and still having, that high cadence, light on her feet. She'd done the work in preparation and got the result that she deserved.
Yeah. I probably unfairly judge her. I always thought that she's really dominant in North America and doesn't travel very well, and has never really done well at some of the marquee races. I know that last year she really targeted 70.3 Worlds and was devastated with, I think, either getting injured close to that race and falling out. And I always really, whilst over the 70.3, she's been a very strong biker, but again, only against other North American athletes. And I just don't think that the depth in North America is as strong as other places in the world. And so I didn't really know how her biking truly stacks up against what we'd say some of the more dominant international female cyclists over the full Ironman distance. But it certainly did. And, do we think, Tex, do you think she can be a threat in Kona?
Maybe not. Kona is probably not a course that's going to suit her as well as Placid and these other ones, but I'd love to see it. Like, it could just be an experience, sort of gathering one, trying to, it's a big ask. Paula has been quite injury prone, and when she does turn up on a start line is super fit like she was in Placid, she's always going to be one of the favourites. And if she can hold that together for Kona and do the work required for Kona, we were just talking before the podcast, it's 12 weeks away, thankfully. There's a lot of specificity that could be done and a lot of heat work. It would be fascinating. I think it's just another name to throw in the hat for Kona and a women's field where there's, we talk about this sort of top tier and maybe the next ones that are going to fill places 4 to 10, incredible athletes, but there's about 3 names that are always, if you're going to do a podium pick, which 3 you're going to pick.
Yeah.
I think she probably just falls somewhere in between that category. Maybe not a first, but maybe a third or a fourth at the moment.
Yeah. You'd look at that run and be like quite impressed with that because 2:55 on debut and pacing the race. And like you say, she's not known for a massive, well, she says 25-hour training weeks all the time, but it's the run that I think she's had to be the most cautious with in terms of building the volume for it. But she obviously got enough in to perform well. So certainly a great race there. Marta Sanchez, again, just showing her consistency. Zelinkis, finishing the podium. But there were a few athletes. Tamara Jewett ran well in the back end, as she always does, a 2:48 marathon. Grace Tech is probably a little bit disappointed with her performance there. I think she would have hoped for more, especially in the Pro Ironman series. And when you finish that far down, your points are not that great. So certainly some people who would have been hoping for more. And then in Chelsea Sodaro's case, only having to validate as a previous Kona champion, she's had a long time. I know she came back from surgery at the beginning of the year, but you give yourself the chance to stand on the start line relatively fresh. She doesn't have the same sort of races in her legs. So the questions have to be asked as to whether Chelsea Sodaro is ever going to be a threat at the front of the race again. Guy, what do you reckon?
Well, I didn't get to see it live. Was she in the mix at all? Was there like a time where she was like in the mix to like 70, 80, 90K of the bike, or was it just like straight out the back door to start with?
I think I saw some coverage of her I think she had a pretty decent swim, and she was certainly in the mix during the bike ride in and around Zelinkis and a few others, Marta Sanchez at points as well. I don't know if Paula had ridden off at that point, but I mean, I think the major capitulation happened on the run.
So she was actually, she ran herself into third. So Marta and Paula came off the bike together into transition. And Paula ran away from her, and Chelsea ran herself. She passed Rachel, into third, and was running in third. And then obviously she, capitulated, as you used that word.
Did I use that word? Are you blaming me? Are you like just in case? Well, it is. I mean, we might find that it is a recurrence of her injury, which places Kona in doubt for sure. But, the run has been her weapon and how she won Kona in the past. But she doesn't race a lot nowadays, and I think she finds some challenges in getting onto start lines consistently. So it's not going to, for an athlete that's noted, maybe her confidence has been rocked in the last year or so, it's not really the sort of performance that you want to take into Kona, Guy.
Yeah, I feel like her good performances are laying heavy on her shoulders rather than it being like, oh, okay, I've got those in the bag, I can get there again. There's that pressure to perform, and, I'm not in her camp at all, but it would be quite a tough camp to be in, I imagine, just trying to pick her back up and get the best out of her, because she is a talented athlete, and how do you do that? And I don't know. It'd be tough because the potential is there and you want to see her get back to her best. And obviously there's still snippets of it in there because she's run herself into a decent position, and the potential to get further along is good, but there's some things that aren't missing. And again, without being on the inside, you just don't know. But it's I hope she has a good race in Kona, because she is a phenomenal runner with that great background. It's but something's not quite clicking. So I don't know. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. So I try and find the positive. I hope she has a good race in Kona. I hope she can run to her potential and top 10, maybe.
Albeit that you just have offered your coaching services, should she be looking to reach out for new ideas and new inspiration?
Yeah. If she wants to come on down to Crazy Town, she's welcome to join me.
What about the men's race, Tex? Van Riel, we always know that he's such an exceptional biker. They seem to create a gap in the swim, and the likes of Marquardt, who's a pretty handy swimmer himself, I think they came out of the water with a bit of a lead on that group, but he's going to have to be a threat in Kona. If he can get racing in the heat nailed, he's got every other skill set to stay at the front of the race, like we saw in Roth, with the tactics that were used to beat the likes of Blumenfeld and so forth. You'd expect him to be up there with Schomburg, Laidlow, and the like in the pointy end in Kona, wouldn't you? And yourself, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I've got a bit of swim work to do, bike work, maybe run work at this point. But so like, I don't know if he was ever not a contender, right? For that, it was always, he's a triathlete. Like, he was good at Olympic. He's transitioned well to 70.3, and he's moved up into this full distance and seems to have got it pretty dialed in. He races with a lot of maturity. Like, he's very patient, and it wasn't like he overexerted himself on the bike, that he was worried about Trevor Foley or anything like that. He just did his own race, and he's backed it up with a 2:34. And I think, as you say, like, yeah, he'll be in that swim group, you'd assume, with Laidlow and all them. But the biggest problem all those guys have got is he's probably the best runner of them all.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to have to get rid of them. It's not like Blumenfeld where they're like, oh, we can get rid of him on the swim and we can build a gap. It's like, no, we have to start the run with a guy that's circa 1 minute different to maybe Blumenfeld. Like, there's not much in it between Blumenfeld and Marten Van Riel, really.
Yeah. And it's actually a good point that you made, that he's a great athlete. But do you know it's his first Ironman win, like the full distance? So he's been there or thereabouts, but I only saw that in the press release today that that's his first title. It's good to get that monkey off your back as such before Kona as well. Matthew Marquardt, and that guy just performs all the time and improves. Guy?
2:37.
I know.
Same as West. Him and West ran the same time.
I know.
Run those numbers.
And he's probably carrying at least, I reckon, 20 kgs on Jason West. Easy, in his quads. The guy moves well for one of the slightly bigger built athletes. I mean, his power output on the bike is phenomenal, because he actually outrode Van Riel and was making some inroads in the back end of the bike ride on him as well. But he's so, now that he's got his cramping under control, the guy is a threat at every single race that he's involved in. Guy, what did you have to say?
No, actually, I was going to, on Matthew, like, his power running would be interesting. If he runs with those foot pads, it would be interesting to see his power. I think it would be just like his biking, crazy high. But then I was like, going back to Marten Van Riel, and I thought, his biomechanics remind me of a certain Jack Moody. You know how you said, Jack, when you as power, or you're a torsional runner or something like this, because you twisted it. Yeah. Would you put Marten Van Riel in that same sort of category? Because he's I'm gonna put that out there and say he's not the prettiest when he swims, bikes, or runs, but damn, he is fast. And I wanted your opinion. Is he similar to you in terms of that torsional twist? Because he does it both in biking and running. He sort of got the
he does it way better. I obviously needed way stiffer spring. Like, my whole spring's way out. Yeah,
I'm just sitting back going, Texas going, yeah, me and Marten Van Riel. I'm surprised that other people haven't noticed the similarities between us on the international. But thank you, Guy, as Jack's number one fan. But you are right. He is a. Yeah. I can see that. I can see what you're getting at. And look, maybe what we just need to confirm this is an opportunity in Kona where Jack pulls up alongside Marten at some point on the run, and we make that apples for apples comparison live on TV.
Maybe overtake
Tex?
on the bike as well. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you just write these all down, send them to my coach, we'll come up with a bit of a race plan, and I've got heaps of training to do, but no problemo.
No.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, that's the easy part. I mean, it's as simple as that. Look, I think after Marquardt and Van Riel, it really sort of no one else was truly in the race as such as in terms of pushing it. Trevor Foley will probably be someone who would be a bit disappointed with his time. Jason West will be over the moon. Ben Canute, who I've got to be honest, is not the most consistent athlete over those distances, or racing at the highest level of the sport, but he's going to be very chuffed with a third place in a pro series. He actually sits quite high up in the overall rankings now as a result of that. Still a few minutes back from the front two. Rudy von Berg had another solid race. And I think Fred Funk and Christian Hogenheld secured Kona slots off the back of a Roth performance only a couple of weeks before. Don't know how that's going to translate. I mean, yes, you might get your ticket to Kona. Not absolutely sure that achieving it by 2 iron distance races in quick succession are going to help you with your Kona prep. Kate, what's the closest you ever put together 2 races? Don't tell me, don't do the old Sodaro where you raced on one weekend and raced on the other.
I didn't actually do that, but it did cross my mind to try it. But now I think it's beyond that. Like I'm a little bit too old for that. I feel like if you're going to do that one, you got to do it when you were younger. But Guy and I were just talking about this a few weeks ago because with the old system back in our day, it was just about collecting points. So the more races you did, the more points you had, the more chances you had of going to Kona. So I was doing 6 Ironmans in a year, and which I did a couple of times. But the closest backups would probably still have just been Kona in October and WA in December. So still, a couple of months. There was never anything any shorter than that. In regards to Ironman, we did do Ironman and 70.3 back-to-back races many times.
Ironman going into a 70.3 the next week.
And the other way.
And the other way around.
Yes, we did lots of those.
Tex has done a half 2 weeks before. I don't think we'd be persuading him to do a half 1 week before. And I can see the rationale behind that. But, the Ironman into a 70.3, that's a tough ask. Guy,
it was, yeah. Guy, well, the only reason we did it was because it was Challenge Taiwan and on a Sunday, and we always did Bustleton 70.3 / Busso 100, and that was on the Saturday. So it was actually a 6-day turnaround. Guy loved it, didn't you? Loved it.
Wow. Tex is going to be too young for this, but we can go back to the days of Sodaro athletes who were regularly doing back-to-back Ironman weekends. Chris McDonald. Remember Chris McDonald? You guys will remember Chris McDonald. How many times did he do back? Hilary Biscay? You'll know Hilary Biscay from...
Yes, all the time.
Do them back-to-back. It's where she got, I think, maybe 1 or 2 Ironman victories. After an Ironman. And we knew that there was that situation a few years ago here in New Zealand when we had Challenge Wanaka full, and the weekends ended up being, one weekend was Challenge Wanaka full, the next weekend was Ironman New Zealand. And I'm sure that shortened the careers of a number of athletes that I know here in New Zealand when they went about doing that, because that's just crazy. I mean, that's going to impact your health at some point further down the line. Tex, there's no way you could do, what do you reckon, especially not Ironman, you need a decent break after Ironman, don't you? Because of that torsional thing that's going on.
You and Marten, the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always approached it with like, and it's right, not rightly or wrongly. My own philosophy was like, I've only got so many races to do, and I can either squeeze them all together and do them in 2 years, or I can spread them out over 10.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely taken the approach of spreading it out. And like, we've seen it with when the whole Pro Series and the T100 and how many people just hit it running, like 15 races in a year, and then they're injured for the whole following year. And that's where I've been like, validated my own internal thought process on that one. I don't mind. I quite like doing Wanaka into Ironman New Zealand, like the 2 weeks. But
yeah,
I think more than anything, being down here in New Zealand, it's a location thing. It's the travel. It's I think if you're in Europe and you knew you're going from one place to the next, and it's a drive away, it's 2 hours either direction from your base. That's a big difference from me jumping on a plane the other side of the world.
Yeah,
and then come back and doing another flight.
We used to do a lot of like Asian races back to back. So we'd go up a couple of days before and race one on a Sunday, and then the next weekend you would do another one. So you'd get 2 70.3s in 10 days and being away for 10 days.
Yeah.
Come back and that was quite easy to do because there was a lot of there were so many races to choose from.
Yeah. It's probably why Guy's back is playing up on him, and he's very close to the end of his pro career. But do you want to know what the secret sauce is? Plasmaide.
Yeah.
Nice timing.
Yeah.
Tex, tell us why the age groupers, and there's only really 2 age groupers here, one who doesn't actually participate, that's me, and the other one obviously being Kate. Why should she be thinking about Plasmaide?
Well, you use it as if you're a Plasmaide user yourself anyway, because there's health benefits actually outside of sporting performance. But there's plenty of research to back it up just outside of sort of your travel and your day-to-day health and your, But then the actual sport benefit, I use it for hard sessions and without going on. There's enough to suggest placebo or not, there's enough science out there to suggest that there is a boost in it for hard sessions, and I'll religiously use it for all my racing and have done for, we've been using it for maybe 2 or 3 years now. I'm going to say 3 years.
Yep.
And it'd be one of those things you wouldn't go without with a race. And then last year, I remember they did a competition that came out and they sponsor Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Eden. And to the point, like they're fully invested in it. Like they don't sponsor a crazy amount of athletes, but they hold a competition each year where you get to go and train with the 2 of them on a training camp, which for a small enough company in the supplement it's not a supplement, it's like a training aid. But anyway, that is pretty ridiculous for them to offer that. And they're flying you. So I think last year was Font Romeu, wasn't it, for the training camp? Was that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
And this year it's St. Moritz. So obviously things are good, because St. Moritz is expensive. And it's
so what do I need to do to enter? Wait, that's the important details.
No, I've got it here. How to enter. It's a 2-step entry process. You purchase a mixed 6-pack or 14-pack from plasmaide.com and then complete the entry form. It's actually that easy, which is pretty cool because, like, in terms of what you get, you're getting exclusive training sessions on a training camp. And if you see any of the content they put out, if you follow them on Instagram, like the 2 athletes that went last year, and we know the scientists from Plasmaide had an absolute whale of the time. They absolutely loved it. How often do you get to go and train with like the world champ, like Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav, in like that sort of environment? And as far as athletes go, everyone sort of says they're quite a lot of fun. And then you get all the testing as well. So if you want to do all this lab testing, you might as well do it with them. And then you get some free Plasmaide. And return flights and 3 nights accommodation and all meals.
And chronic fatigue for 3 years.
No, actually,
I'll enter.
I think I'm allowed to say this on the thing. So the scientist we know is not the fastest runner, bless her, but Gustav went out with her, didn't he? And ran at her pace. And we're talking probably 8-minute K, 7-minute K.
Whoa. 7:15s.
Yeah, 7:15. I was within the right ballpark. But it wasn't like he was going out there to flex on them and show them how much better he was. It was, I'll go and do something nice with them and just chew their ear off while they're breathing through their nose.
Yeah.
At 7:15, or through their ears at 7:15s. But
so
I think that's awesome.
We need to get you guys on Plasmaide, literally because of the true benefits that it actually offers from a recovery perspective and also a lowering of lactate. So one of the other benefits there is we see quite a obvious lowering of lactate in high intensity sessions as well, but it also helps with travel, which you guys do a lot of. And I know if, Kate, you were to win the competition, you'd leave your husband at home because you don't want to have a ball and chain going with you when you're hanging out with Christian and Gustav and probably Casper as well, because he tends to be the third wheel in that. He isn't sponsored by Plasmaide, but let me tell you, Casper was very present in the sessions that the age group has got to be involved in. You probably wouldn't need to even introduce yourself, Kate, because if they don't know who you are, then they've been living under a rock. And just don't wear your wedding ring when you go, because you probably need to make sure that you have the best time that you possibly can when you're there.
Get the best training sessions.
Get the best training sessions. Leave the old man at home. But I tell you what, it is an incredible prize to win. So we'll put links to that in our show notes. We interviewed the two age groupers who won, we interviewed one of the age groupers last year who came back from the camp, and he absolutely waxed lyrical about what they got, not only the testing, but just how open and friendly the Norwegians are in terms of sharing their life with everything, with their training. And, they were really, really supportive. So make sure you get your name in the hat, people. It's very simple to enter. You never know, you might be winging your way to St. Moritz. Now, last week, we had a brief discussion in and around the gas that builds up in Jack's stomach when he gets x-rayed, which was a conversation that sort of flowed out of fueling for endurance sports. And I did threaten that we would release an interview that I did with a researcher, Charlotte McLauchlan, who had recently completed a study that we helped her find participants for in the last 18 months. And she is based at the University of Auckland, and she completed her master's research there, examining the energy balance in age group triathletes over a 12-week period as they built towards an event. And I think the study findings were, I'm not going to say shocking, because they didn't surprise me, but some of the findings in the study I think will surprise a lot of the listeners. So we're going to go to that interview now, hear about the study, what Charlotte was able to find and how that might impact our listeners in terms of their training and their fueling for performance. So let's hear from Charlotte now. Welcome back to the podcast today, Charlotte McLauchlan. And as promised, I said, and it's just on a year to date, that we were going to get you back on the show. For the listeners of the show, they may remember that Charlotte is a master's student in nutrition and dietetics at Auckland University, and we were going to solve the problems of the world for age group triathlon and the fueling of age group triathlon. That's what we promised, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if we've quite solved it in a year, but hopefully, maybe give us 10 years and we'll be there.
Well, at the time we were doing a shout out because you're about to do a study and you were looking for participants to the study. So just remind the listeners what and who you were looking for way back then a year ago.
Yes, so we were looking for basically any age grouper competing in a triathlon over 2025, and we got a really good number of people coming through. Had a few drop-offs, but it's quite a strenuous, time-consuming thing to do. So we were expecting some people to not be able to carry through. It's a completely normal thing, when you're balancing life and work and everything. But we were looking at essentially energy balance. So the calories in versus calorie out of these age group triathletes across a 12-week period of training leading up to a race. And then looking at are people meeting their energy requirements or not? And then if they're not, what's happening? So we looked at a kind of a range of outcomes from physical health like injuries, bone stress injuries, menstrual function in females, all the way to mental health and psychological health. And we had some limitations on like how deeply we could investigate those things. There's only so much you can find out from some surveys, but we did our best with the resources that we had at hand. And I just wanted to say thank you to anyone who's listening who took part. And I will be in touch with all of you. It's just been a very busy period. But yeah, thank you for taking part. It gave us some really, really valuable insight into everything.
Okay. You excluded some people as well. We're really looking at trying to get to the heart of the matter, which is the age group population as much as anything. And so you're excluding sort of people with a slightly more elite background or people who had too much exposure to nutrition education.
Yes, so we decided to focus mainly on that age group population, and we had some very competitive races still. But basically, we wanted to steer away from anyone that might have additional nutrition support. So whether that comes from a nutrition sponsor, you've got much better access to things like gels and sports drinks and the calories and the carbohydrates that aid your training versus age groupers that have to pay for it. And also just, if you're coming from a group training program or from the High Performance Sport New Zealand area, you've got access to dietitians and nutritionists. And so the access to information we decided, and also nutrition product, would be like a confounding factor in our results. So we decided, keep it at the age group population. They're the largest population competing, right? I mean, you've got 3,000 people versus 50 people, in the elite. And from all walks of life, people who have been lifelong athletes, people that have picked it up in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s even. And so it just kind of captures a bit more of a realistic picture of what's going on.
Yeah. You just spoke directly to my podcast audience. That's them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why we hit you up, Bevan. So thank you as well. We definitely... Sorry, I was just going to say we definitely wouldn't have had the uptake that we did without your help as well, Bevan. So thank you so much.
Hey, look, we talked off air and just now and before we started a year ago when we were talking about you guys were starting the search for getting some participants. And you at that point in time, you recounted your own personal history dealing with some low energy availability and some of the issues in and around that. And, since then, it's still been my personal crusade to make people aware that I believe personally that this is the biggest problem in the sport. By no means it's a criticism of the sport. It's a lot of it is inadvertent. People just don't know what they don't know. And I see it happening all the time. And like between your interview in April 2025 and now, it still amazes me how many athletes or professionals or experts I've interviewed in that time, not directly about the subject, but as we're talking and doing the interview, they'll go, oh, yeah, I had 2 years where I was in reds, or I know what low energy availability is. Yeah, I had some problems back then. And you're like, wow, it is way more prevalent, and it probably backs up my suspicion of where the sport currently is at. So when you guys started to pull this data, I think you and your supervisor were mildly, if not moderately, if not extremely surprised with some of the results.
Yes, I think we were surprised on the significance of the results. I assumed that I would see some of the patterns that we did see, but not to the level that we did see it. And in smaller studies like a master's level thesis, you don't have as large population sizes for these studies. And so to get significant results is a lot harder. You need quite a significant divergence between the two groups. And so I think that was like one of the biggest things that we were surprised and stoked about, was that we actually had large enough differences between athletes in energy balance and not, and their outcomes to actually then see significant differences between the groups.
That doesn't surprise me. I wish it did, but it doesn't surprise me.
Me too.
It sort of just reflects what I think was the motivator for you to suggest this to your supervisor as a potential master's thesis? Not just because of your own personal experience, but you've been around the sport. You know people in the sport, you've seen behaviors in the sport. I'm sure that was one of the reasons that you thought maybe this is worth conducting a study on.
Yeah, absolutely. All my friends are basically into the sport. I also did my first 70.3 in March in New Zealand. So
yeah.
it was a bumpy road in the lead up, but I loved it. And like from a personal point of view, I was the heaviest I've ever been at that race, and I still made it through because I was like, for me, the fueling was more important, and I did put on a little bit of weight during my prep. But for me, that was actually more important to meet the energy requirements of the training I was doing than, stay the weight I was or lose weight and risk entering a low energy availability state and then not even making it to the start line. So that was my experience with it. But I've got so many friends around me, males and females, who have just struggled with being crippled with injuries over and over again. And like, not that I am aware of their bodies or judging their bodies, but you do notice patterns of, they look like they've lost a bit of weight or something. And and especially, I think, coming from my qualification background, but also my own background with eating disorders and everything, you do pick up on patterns of people. You do start to notice these, well, they did get a stress fracture, and I also noticed this, and you kind of start to put the pieces together. So that's been a really interesting journey. And also, it's a very interesting one is seeing people who have got leaner and they've gotten faster, and they're like, and everyone's like, whoa, you're doing so well. This is amazing. Your running has come so far, but there's a point at which that actually just falls apart. And so just seeing that on a day-to-day basis and talking to friends and even people I don't know, people you see on social media and everything, and you think, oh my gosh, they're so lean and they're so fast. And then 3 months down the line, they're posting on Instagram, like, I'm gutted that I've got a stress fracture. And you think, you kind of put the pieces together in a completely non-judgmental way, of course, because so much goes into that. But
you've had your own experiences. And then, like you say, people and the research as well. Generally, it's not that they post in 3 months' time on social media. They disappear for 3 months.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's true.
And then the confession comes out afterwards. Okay, you were looking at this through the lens of energy availability, the IOC guidelines?
Yeah, so we tried our best, but so essentially we could calculate energy availability, but only for our participants that did a DEXA scan, because part of the energy availability calculation is fat-free mass, so it's only really something we can do if we've got a DEXA scan, and not all of our athletes could have a scan just because they couldn't make it into the clinic. So we had energy availability numbers for just over half, and then for the whole study we used just the energy balance equation, which comes with its limitations, but we applied quite a strict threshold for what would define being in energy balance versus not. So anything up to negative 500 calories, so eating 500 calories below their expenditure. Anything greater than that was considered to be not an energy balance, because we have to account for things like misreporting and underreporting, which are really common in these kind of dietary record studies. And then, so we talked about energy balance because that's what we had for everyone, but we did talk to energy availability for those that could. And also part of our assumption was anyone that was in negative energy balance below that 500 calorie threshold would be in low energy availability, because that's the pattern that showed. Because for all of the athletes that we did have energy availability for, who were below that 500 calorie threshold, were in low energy availability below the 30 kilocalories per kilo fat-free mass per day. That's the kind of general limit. And there are limitations to these things. Typically, if you want an actual very accurate energy availability reading, you need daily food diaries for 365 days, and we just can't do that. But we did our best with what we had available, and we applied that threshold, and we applied other kind of rules and thresholds to prevent really crazy misreporting, so that we could have the best kind of picture that we could within those limitations.
Okay, fair enough. I was going to do my best at explaining energy availability. I'll give it a crack. Is after the energy that's required for bodily functions and training expenditure, we need a certain amount of energy left over to keep our system running healthily. And the IOC has defined 30 kilocalories per kg of fat-free mass per day as being the lowest limit before we start to get into some real problem areas.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so basically our body, exercise is an immediate energy expensive process, right? If you're exercising, your body has to give energy towards that. And the low energy availability is when you don't have enough energy to support your basal physiological function. So anyone can go into low energy availability. It's just much easier for endurance athletes because they've got such high energy expenditure. And I was going to say something else about the threshold. Oh, well, it'll come back to me.
Okay. Well, let's get on to some of the results.
Yeah.
Okay. Because not only what I found interesting was not only just the percentages, but also the way that you also looked at the days that some of these typically occurred on in terms of if there was a deficit. And then obviously this reflects working athletes where they train a lot across the weekends and what that might mean for the knock-on effect for the early part of next week in terms of how they're sleeping, how they're feeling, what their mood's like, and so forth. So, let's start off. 41% of participants.
Yes, 41% in negative energy balance. So anything kind of a calorie deficit, as you'd call it, more than 500 calories, which was like not surprising, but also surprising at the same time. I was expecting to see a large number of, energy deficits, but to see it on paper and on the calculations on this Excel spreadsheet was definitely very, I guess, maybe confronting to think, wow, it really is real.
Yeah. What did your supervisor think of that, especially over 12 weeks? I mean, it's an extensive period. There could be, some phases, depending on people's lives, where they navigated their way back out of it. But, on average, just under half of the participants were showing signs. And over 12 weeks, you get your calorie intake that wrong, because, it's 500, could be more, then you're going to be running into some problems real quick.
Yeah. We had deficits up to like 2,500 calories. So that was the biggest one. And that's an average. So we took the average. So we averaged across, we did 3-day diet records 3 times. So we had 9 food records, which again, we did to hopefully minimize like any variance that wasn't related to the actual intake. And the largest deficit was 2,500 calories below their energy expenditure. And we had a couple in that kind of 1,000 to 1,300 range, and then a few around the kind of 500 to 700 range. So quite a large range. And those larger end ones, we did see the worst outcomes in as well. And it was quite interesting. Like it changed over the 12 weeks. So at week 12, we actually saw the highest percentage of energy deficit. So even people who ended up in their average energy balance were in a deficit on those 3 days in week 12. Week 6 kind of had the lowest amount of deficits, and then it came back up in week 12. In week 2. This is all pre-race. So week 12 is 12 weeks pre-race, etc. So seeing that kind of variance and how it changed over time, and then averaging it across the 12 weeks, of course, kind of mitigates any one-day deficits that might have popped up randomly or been misreporting or something. You mentioned the day of week pattern. So we found a very interesting day of week pattern where a Saturday was consistently the largest energy deficit. So Thursday, Friday, we still had people in energy deficits, but Saturdays were pretty consistently the largest, the largest energy deficit on average, and also the most frequent one. And that kind of lines up with our assumptions. And we didn't ask this, so we did have to just assume, but most of our participants were working full-time or studying full-time. And so, you do place your higher training load days on the weekend because you don't have time to do it during the week. And so that was just a really interesting finding that I didn't even think that we would find something like that. It didn't even cross my mind, but it was very interesting to look at how the day of the week changed the risk of being in a deficit.
Yeah. Could you, and do you know what the average, if we just talk about like absolute volume, roughly in terms of hours per week, that's the low end of this cohort were training, and then what was the upper sort of end? I know volume doesn't paint the entire picture as such, but it may also help us understand, if we're athletes out there, we're doing relatively the same sort of number of minutes of training as some of these people in the study.
Yeah, the range was kind of around 7 to kind of, we had one with really high training volume over 20 hours, but they were an outlier. And it was kind of between like 7 to 9 was the lowest, up to 16, 17 within that range. And there was actually no difference between athletes. So if we think about our cohort as two groups, the energy balance athletes and the energy deficit athletes, there was actually no difference between the training hours. There was a trend towards athletes in a deficit having slightly higher energy expenditure through their training or training hours, but that wasn't a significant difference. And that was surprising because I kind of went in thinking, people who train more might be more susceptible to being in an energy deficit, but the statistics wasn't there to support that. While we can see, looking at the graphs, they've got slightly taller bars and slightly greater kind of intervals between them. There was no difference really in the training hours.
Interesting. I'm going to hypothesize there. I do wonder if those people at the lower end are more food conscious. And those people, and therefore still achieve a deficit quite easily, because 7 to 9 hours is still more than the average exerciser, and it comes down to relationships and with food and what the desired outcome of your training is, because I think a lot of people do it for weight management, but then at the upper end, obviously just the extra training volume as such is creating that deficit. But as I say, it's interesting to see that even at the lower end of the training volume, people were still having difficulty meeting their energy requirements for whatever reason, whether it was conscious or unconscious.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mention like the motivations for training, because we did also ask at the end, what was your nutrition goals for your training block? And we had different options. There was maintain weight, gain weight, reduce weight. And then there was also increase muscle, reduce muscle, but we didn't have anyone answer those. And then the last one was to have energy for my training. And we did have a significantly higher number of athletes citing to lose weight in the energy deficit group versus we had a higher number of athletes citing it to have energy for training in the energy balance group. So there was a difference in motivations. It wasn't huge, but there was a difference in the motivations for these training blocks.
Yeah, interesting. It's almost like they fell into two categories, really. They were using the sport for a body composition motivation, but the ones that tended to maybe achieving better performances in the energy balance group were very conscious of using food for fuel, for optimizing training, and also the recovery of training. So whether they just had a better innate understanding of getting it right versus those people that had entered the sport for body composition goals.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, obviously it's a very individual thing, but I think your motivations going into your training will even subconsciously impact the choices that you make. So whether it's, even if you're just going out for a long ride and you think, I could probably get away with not having many carbs for 3 hours, it's it's not necessarily always conscious. It's kind of just like, well, my motivation is to lose weight, so I'm going to be training for ages, so I may as well just burn the calories and then that'll help me lose weight. And I'm speculating here, but that's kind of how your motivations for your training can still subconsciously impact it. Whereas if you're training for energy, you're like, well, I felt really crap in my ride last week, so I'm going to bump up the carbohydrates and the energy that I have before and after and my meals and everything so that I don't feel like that. So it definitely changes your practices around it.
Were you able to glean from the study how people were feeling on any given day? Were we experiencing poor sleep hygiene, energy levels, anything else that we were measuring within the study that gave us a sense of being able to relate how an athlete's body or brain was responding to their training load and the fuel they were taking in?
Yeah, we found quite a few. So the first one I'll go through is, I guess, for our female listeners, is your menstrual cycle is such a huge tool. And of course, some people are on, contraception and everything, or might not have regular menstruation for some reason. But for the majority of women, if you are a regular menstruator, that is your number one tool. Like, it's the one benefit of having a period, in my opinion, is that you can track. Like, if you've skipped
I can tell you, Charlotte has yet to have her first child.
Yeah.
So, as most people who have yet to have their first child, then it is more a hindrance than anything.
Yes, yeah. But it is such a tool, because if you do start to miss periods or they change, that's the first thing that happens, is the reproductive systems start to shut down, because it's the least important to your immediate life, staying alive. So that's the first thing. And we did have every woman who was in energy balance across the study had a regular period or had no changes in their menstrual function. We did have a few perimenopause and postmenopause women, so they were excluded from this part. And then there was a significant number, 75% of our females in energy deficit did experience at least one menstrual cycle change. So we couldn't figure out the exact changes just based on, like, those surveys are quite strenuous and have a high burden. But we had some changes, and that was significantly higher. And then in terms of how our athletes were feeling, so we looked into sleep, a range of kind of sleep parameters, as well as kind of the frequency of negative feelings like anxiety, depression, blue mood, etc. So the total amount of sleep, so the hours per night, was significantly lower in athletes in an energy deficit than those in energy balance. So they were sleeping less. And then that was the main one that we found in terms of sleep. We asked about things like waking after sleep onset, waking up overnight hungry, sleep quality, so how you actually feel you slept, and those were not significant across the whole time. There were a few points at which they were, so like at 6 weeks the sleep quality was significantly worse, but the main thing that we saw was that they were just sleeping less, which could be that they are busier and not getting to sleep early, or maybe they're early risers or early trainers, or they struggle to get to sleep, which is something that does come up. So that was with sleep. The main thing was, less actual time asleep. And then with negative feelings, our athletes in an energy deficit did report having more frequent negative feelings like anxiety and blue mood and depression. So that was interesting, because I think this, most people are aware that something like a stress fracture or an injury is, more common if you're in an energy deficit or low energy availability. But I think the really interesting part to me is actually how it affects your psychological health. And the IOC outlines, there's like a big graph of all of the body systems that impacts, or that REDS or low energy availability impacts. And the only one that has a bi-directional relationship is psychological well-being. So it's hard to determine whether psychological distress precedes or as a result of low energy availability, because both are true. It can precede low energy availability with things like eating disorders and disordered eating, but it can also be a result of the low energy availability, because it impacts so much in your brain.
What about tracking things like, were you able to look at recovery rates or anything like that? I suppose at the end of the day, there's only so much that the study can try to ascertain. But I'm assuming that we would see some differences between the energy balance group and the deficit group for sure. But it's interesting. The most obvious ones are the ones that we experience all the time. And I think as we get older, we ask ourselves this as we wake up every morning: how did I sleep? And how do I feel? So it's good that you covered off those ones. But was there anything else that you were able to measure in either of the groups?
Yeah, there was quite a lot else. So the other thing that kind of the psychological side of things was actually also we asked about their energy levels, like rate them out of 10. And that was one of the more significant ones where those in deficit had subjectively lower energy levels. And we ran correlations, which basically looks at like the scale of energy balance to see, does the degree of energy balance or energy deficit then impact the degree of, the energy levels? And sleep time and energy levels were the strongest correlation. So the larger the energy deficit, the less sleep and the lower the subjective energy levels.
Interesting.
Which was interesting because that could also then affect things like your training and your ability to complete your prescribed training, which is something we couldn't measure or we didn't measure. And it would be great in the future to look at things like training intensity and how you met your prescribed training. Did you meet the watts? Did you meet the time? Did you have to cut it short, etc.? So those sorts of things we couldn't measure just because they take more time in the lab and things. But it would be very interesting to see how those energy levels and just the energy deficit in general impact the training quality.
Yeah, I think the first thing that makes me think of is, as a coach, you can simply ditch the wearables, not to say that they don't have value, but ask your athlete. Firstly, if your survey was able to ascertain this because they're giving you honest answers, how do you feel you slept? What is your mood today? And how much energy you feel like you've got going into training? If you see that self-reported over a consistent period, then you need to quickly start to ask the most important question is, how can we work out how much fuel you're getting in and if it's the right amount?
Yeah, exactly. And interesting you say that as well, because we also asked, what is your, how do you feel you're fueled? How well do you feel you've fueled yourself? And there were apart from one isolated on one of the weeks, there was no differences in how athletes actually perceived that they were fueling. And so there was this disconnect between the symptoms that they had or the outcomes that they were experiencing and not realizing or not perhaps putting the two and two together that it was fueling related. Because a lot of the athletes in a deficit were saying, I feel like I'm fueling great. But they weren't, and it wasn't aligned with their symptoms that they were reporting. So it's such an intuitive thing to kind of learn.
Absolutely. And I know that you need to stay within the walls of science and studies and, the rules and regulations. If I just speculate as a coach, it's because appetite does not line up with the increase in training load that we undertake. And if I asked anyone whether they felt they've eaten enough, they only have their appetites to tell them whether that's right or wrong. And I can tell you appetite does not track linearly with training load. Especially, in fact, sometimes there's a suppressive element to training load. So do not be resistant to auditing what you're doing in terms of fueling. If you totally believe that your appetite is the only thing that's going to tell you whether it's right or wrong, the science could tell you something other than that.
Yes, we also did actually ask, how has your appetite changed? Because when I was doing my lit review, one of my literature review, which is when I go back and basically look through all the literature that's done this before, and the kind of argument around appetite did come up quite a lot. And it's still an emerging field in terms of we need some really solid literature on actual measurements of appetite signals, so hormones and everything. But there is a lot of literature coming out to suggest that exercise, especially aerobic exercise, can have an appetite suppressing effect because it changes it changes your it can impact your hormones, mostly ghrelin, which is your hunger, makes you feel hungry, and peptide YY, which is an appetite suppressing hormone as well. So it can change the balance of those, where athletes actually don't feel hungry after their training sessions. And then because we kind of speculated that we didn't have a large amount of significant findings in the appetite space of our study. It was quite a hard thing to measure, but we did find some isolated differences, especially at the 12-week point. The energy balance athletes were more likely to have experienced an increase in their appetite versus the energy deficit. And there were a couple other statistical tests that we did that I won't bore you with that kind of showed there might have been a bit of a trend towards better appetite increases or more appetite increases in the energy balance athletes. And so it kind of brings it all into a massive mixing pot of, are people not meeting their energy requirements because they're not hungry, or are they not hungry because their energy deficit is impacting that? Because that's also an emerging area, is how low energy availability impacts your appetite signaling. So there's just a vast array of things that could be impacting their appetite. But we kind of speculated like maybe some of our athletes just may not have had an appetite response to their training, and therefore thought that they were fueling well because they didn't feel hungry, but then inadvertently were falling into a deficit. So it's all speculative, but it's a very interesting and emerging area, and you're right to bring it up. And I can definitely speak to science that is coming up with these things that aerobic exercise especially can suppress the appetite.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I'm doing so many interviews, have done for many, many years, speaking directly to people who have a vested interest in working in this space, studying this space, but then just anecdotally, the conversations that I have with athletes and experts where so many people have had a brush with low energy availability or REDs. It is so easy to do, but there still seems to be a little bit of a reluctance for people to take the time and effort that's required into actually finding out what their personal requirements are. And I'm not absolutely sure as to what those barriers are. I think it's societal. Definitely there's an aesthetic that we want to achieve through the participation in the sport for sure. That's a massive motivator. But the funny thing is we all also want to be great athletes. Training consistently and with intent and with the ability to adapt to that training. Fuel is the first thing we need to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you could be the leanest you've ever been, but not make it to the start line. And then what's the point of being that lean, right? And I think also like the training consistency side of things is so important, especially in this sport, where it does rely on compounding, really consistent training. And if you've got a stress fracture, that can take you out for 6 months or 3 months or however long, or, even people are put on exercise bans when they're diagnosed with REDS if it's bad enough. So it really does interrupt it. And as I spoke to my own experience, like I was at one of the heaviest points I've ever been when I was racing in March, but it got me to the start line. And it got me off the start line as well. It got me to the finish line and, not crippled by the end of it. And so I think it's such a polarizing thing and topic at the moment because we are seeing just a massive surge of very lean individuals, especially online. But the thing is that you see these influencers and these people doing these crazy runs, but you don't know what they're doing. And so many of them are on injectables that are making them lose weight or making them build muscle, but it's not spoken about. And that's, that's a big thing. And some of them are also just naturally going to be leaner. There's a genetic portion to it as well. And so it's like we see all of and we consume all of this stuff on social media, but we don't actually know what these people are doing to look like that. Is it natural? There is a lot of, pharmaceutical things. Filters, exactly. Even something as simple as that. And pills and everything that people are doing. And so it's, you just never know why they're that lean. And also it just might not even be healthy for them. Most people aren't made to be 10% body fat or below. And it's an unfortunate thing that's hard to come to terms with.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, it's been awesome to have the study have, I don't want to say success, but you know what I mean. To find such significant outcomes from, like you say, a master's thesis. We're not talking thousands and thousands of people, but it was significant enough to be able to come back on and illustrate to us, where the study findings actually arrived at. Where to from here, though?
That's a great question. So, In terms of the research side of things, so there is a girl, a student who was a year below me in the master's program who's taken over. So she's doing data collection at the moment, and then we'll be combining our results at some stage to have like a kind of larger, more robust study, hopefully, and then I guess publication and things from there. For me personally, trying to find a path in the sports nutrition world, I need to register with the New Zealand Dietitians Board because even though I've finished the qualifications, you can't call yourself a dietitian without the registration. It's a legally kind of protected term. So looking forward to doing that whenever I get my thesis marks back. But I'm really looking forward to seeing the next study come out with this, because I think we learned a lot from my study and it wasn't the most ideal kind of process just because we were learning the whole time. Even when I spoke with you a year ago, I didn't really know or have a great idea of where we were going with it. So it'll be really cool to see her results and then combine those. But just one other really interesting result that I did want to bring up, because I think it's important for people to know, because it's not going to show up immediately and you're not going to know that it's there, but the bone mineral density of our athletes in an energy deficit got significantly worse, especially in their spine. We had really, really large percentage losses of bone mineral density in the spine, up to, it was about, I forget the number off the top of my head, but something like 2.2% loss over 3 months, which is a large loss. It takes a while for your bone mineral density to actually reduce. And when I was writing up my discussion and discussing that, I found a study that put people on complete bed rest, so complete disuse of the spine and no mechanical loading, which is one of the things that stimulates bone density and bone remodeling. And the losses in our study population of an active population were comparable to a study of 12 weeks of complete disuse of the spine. So no loading whatsoever. And that was one of the biggest... when we compared our numbers, because these are active individuals and mechanical loading stimulates bone cell remodeling. And that's why, runners and things will typically have pretty good bone density in their legs. But to see such a comparable loss between active individuals and bed rest was insane. And then you think about, well, these people are loading, compromised spine. So what's the outcome of that? And it might not show up now, but you just spine stress fractures are a thing. And also just longevity as well. In general, as we age, we want to protect our bone density, and the spine as well is a very vulnerable spot because it doesn't get loaded like the legs do, for example. So
but if it does go and you do get a fracture in it, you know that you're deep in with a problem if it's got to that particular point. And I have known of athletes who have ended up with stress fractures in the spiny processes of their back and gone, where did that come from? And it's like, well, I think I can tell you now.
And the total bone mineral density of these athletes didn't really change. So it's a really important thing also for practitioners, if anyone's listening, to consider the site-specific bone density. If you're scanning people, because if we had only looked at their total body, we would have missed these really important vulnerable sites. So it's a very important learning curve as well, that, just because their total density or their legs or whatever is fine, it doesn't mean that all these vulnerable spots are. And the spine is a more vulnerable bone kind of area to low energy availability, because it doesn't get the same mechanical stimulus that your legs do, for example. So it becomes even more important. Kind of
especially for those people young who haven't aged yet, and even more important for those people who are already aging from an osteoporosis standpoint. So, okay, all right.
And also, sorry. And also the one other thing is that triathlon has a large proportion of cycling, which is a non-load bearing exercise. And so if you're not getting as much mechanical stimulus, than a true runner or someone who goes to the gym really frequently, cyclists do have the largest risk for poor bone density. And so if you just kind of think, yes, we do have running in triathlon, so maybe it mitigates some of it, but if you add in low energy availability and a proportion of minimal weight bearing, such as cycling, which is the largest discipline of the three, right, in terms of the time you do during the race, then it's just all very important considerations to make there.
100%. Well, on that note,
Yes, on that very happy note.
Where's your next race?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm actually going to Europe for 5 weeks over June and July. So I'm hoping to stay running and everything while I'm over there, but I'm not going to put pressure on training. But maybe Sunshine Coast, if I can come back from Europe and get, the swimming and the biking comes pretty naturally to me. It's just if I can get that consistent running in there. Otherwise, maybe there's some local races in the New Zealand, like the next season, maybe the Tauranga half, or I'm signed up for Taupo next year as well. So I'm gonna do that half again. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, it just depends on how fit I can stay when I go on holiday.
All right. Well, I'm sure that the fueling on holiday through Europe will be easy to achieve.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I'm going to struggle to get the carbs on board.
All right, mate. Well, as promised, you came back on the show.
Yes.
You've given us the results, and we do hope that we see more research come out from you in the future. But thank you very much for your time, and we hope to catch up at a race sometime soon in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much again, Bevan. Genuinely, your hand in this was so important. And I also did give you an acknowledgement on my thesis. We have a page of acknowledgement. So I did shout you out there as well, just to say thank you for helping with the...
Does that make me a published author?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, your feature in it. But yeah, thank you so much. And also thanks to everyone who signed up off the back of the last podcast. I wouldn't have been able to do the study without it. So thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, mate. We'll see you soon.
No worries.
The big headline: 41% of athletes involved in the study were in significant energy deficit. Nearly half of the athletes were averaging more than a 500 calorie per day deficit across the race build. And some athletes were actually averaging deficits of over 2,500 calories per day, which I think is more in line with their weekend training when we do tend to do our bigger hours. And this wasn't just an occasional under-fueled workout. It actually reflected a sustained pattern over many weeks. As I say, the study was over 12 weeks. The athletes were only training on average somewhere around about 7 to 9 hours. But they also had athletes who were training more than that. But even those athletes at the lower end, they found in the study, were still just as likely to be in an energy deficit. Now, these are athletes when we talk about 7 to 9 hours a week. I mean, whether you're doing a triathlon or not, I know a lot of people who would do that just for general health, go for a run every day, maybe go to the gym as well. 7 hours is not a lot of exercise for some people to collect. But certainly we still found, or the study still found, that it was very easy for athletes to get into a deficit there. And the problem isn't simply that they were training too much. It was more to do with the fact that they were just failing to match intake with training demands. So, Guy, I'll go to you first. Is that a surprise to you, as high as 41%?
Actually, it is a little bit. I thought now with all of the stuff coming out and everyone eating more and training and there being a bit more information out there about it, and, the more is better sort of approach to, at least in racing fueling, that I would have thought it would be higher, because if in racing fueling is higher, then obviously you need to support your body while you're while you are training. So yeah, I'm a bit surprised by 41%. I thought 20% would be about right, because some people just under fuel, but 41's above what I had in my head.
Yeah. Well, I think that, we are talking a lot about race day fueling, and everyone's talking about carbohydrates and grams per hour, but that's just a one-off day. You very rarely see athletes go out and practice that, and if they do, they tend to only do it on their weekend sessions. And when you think of the total caloric burn of a 5-hour bike ride, well, we certainly don't take in enough carbohydrate to offset the amount of calories that we burn in that session. So yes, I think those two conversations are sort of mutually exclusive. I think people love to think about carbohydrate if it's going to improve their race day performance. But I think in their general day-to-day life, they then tend to steer clear of it. Because if I think of the athletes I coach, not many people would turn to sports nutrition for their training within a week, especially if their sessions are only 60 minutes to an hour. They might take an electrolyte. I don't really see them taking on sports nutrition in terms of carbohydrates or gels or anything like that. So a lot of what they do in the week is probably left to just their free-range eating. So I don't think that those things sort of sit in the same boat. Kate, from your perspective, what did you think about the study findings?
I honestly, I feel like I'm similar with Guy. I would have expected, hopefully, for it to be a little bit less. Obviously, is not, but I'm also not surprised at the same time. I mean, I just had a discussion this morning with an athlete, and about nutrition and nutrition outside of training, like supporting the training that she was doing. Before she started her plan, we had discussed that she needed to increase her fueling strategies to support preparation for the next event coming up. And she's been struggling to do that. She did go and see someone for some advice, but it was more of just a one-on-one session. And I think she needs someone that is actually going to monitor her on a more regular basis, because she thinks she's getting in enough, but she still is not actually getting in enough. But the most surprising thing from her was the question. She said to me, have you had any other athletes? Like, I don't feel like this is very common. Have you had any other athletes in this situation? And I said, actually, it's like really, like, you're not the only one. This is unfortunately quite normal. And she was actually surprised by that. It wasn't, just her that I've had that has had that situation. And it's, yeah.
Now,
like we spoke about last week.
Yeah. Now, Tex, you've been around a lot of age group athletes. I think it still surprises you at how cautious they are in and around their eating.
Yeah, I actually thought that I thought that was on the low side. I thought that was going to be higher, to be honest. I thought that was going to be 50, 60%. I just think unfortunately, triathlons and like endurance sport is quite a body conscious sport.
Yeah.
And it's the demographic, it's the type of people that attract it, and they're trying to do it to look fit and healthy, and it's very image focused, which generally, as much as you're doing this right stuff on race day, becomes quite restrictive outside of it, which is a bit sad. And it's just a lack of education and understanding that you can actually still be, lean and fit and healthy, and it's not because you're on a restrictive diet like that. You can, if you eat for the work required, you can do more training, and it's like this whole cyclic pattern.
Yeah.
Like if you look after yourself up front, you've got more consistency, which means you've got more training, which means you get better. Like the whole system just starts at the front. And it's, I don't know, you've hammered it home with me. We've had a long, lengthy debates, haven't we? We've won
never been a debate
over the years.
There's no debate.
Wow. Thankfully, it's never been directed at me personally.
You've had the pleasure of listening in on my calls, and I'd say pleasure in inverted commas, because I think we've spent so much time in each other's company where I've been performing my coaching duties overseas, conversations. I would hazard a guess that the most consistent message that tends to end up in the conversation I have with age group athletes is nutrition. And you've had the distinct displeasure of having to sit through hours of me on calls just explaining how this all works, because what I do know about the sport is that most athletes come to it feeling that in order to feel guilt-free about eating, they need to have earned the right to eat by performing a workout. So that's in reverse order as to how it should truly work, is that until I feel comfortable eating more, I need to have trained to be able to have earned the right, so that the psychological guilt around how much a triathlete does eat, which is an unfeasible amount of food, is removed from a societal perspective. So people don't look at you and go, man, you eat a lot, which is a really terrible thing to say to anyone else, because the natural reaction is one of, oh, do they think I'm like a glutton, or am I going to put on weight? So that's a big problem. I think the other thing that people don't actually realize is that our stomach is only a certain size, and it doesn't change based on the number of hours that we train in a week. And it will feel full after a certain size meal. And if we use appetite as our only measure of whether we're eating enough, well, 4 meals in a day will fill us up, and our appetite will tell us that we've eaten enough. However, if you're doing 16 hours of training a week, 4 meals a day is not going to cut it. And so a lot of people assume that appetite is going to trend in a similar fashion to training load, and it quite simply doesn't. In point of fact, there's emerging evidence to suggest that endurance training, or a hard session in particular, actually suppresses appetite. So we might find that post HIIT interval session, that for an hour or so afterwards, we actually don't feel like eating much at all. So we have a few things that really play against us. And I do believe the appetite thing, and also what society deems as an appropriate amount to eat, because I've been in your company, Tex, where people have commented on how much you eat, and they've commented it on a suspicion and a negative connotation to the volumes of food you eat, because we just don't work in this, which you've completely ignored. But and Kate, I'm going to put this to you then. As a female athlete, if someone walked past and said, "Oh God, you eat a lot," your natural reaction is going to be, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating this much." Or is that a generalization? What do you think?
Oh, look, it's a generalization, but I think it's the truth. I don't think there's many females out there that would think any differently if someone said to them, "Oh, you look, you seem to be eating a lot," or, "What have you got there on your plate?" It's automatically just going to be felt as a criticism, and the next minute, most likely, the female's going to walk away and not eat for 24 hours because someone just told them they've had a big meal. So it's a fine line. And the other thing I find too is a lot of them are like, "Oh, but I'm getting the carbs in all the time," and it's like, yeah, but there's more to it than just the carbs. Like, the protein has a very special place, and timing as well. Like, what are you doing there? And it's just, like you said, Tex, it's just the lack of knowledge about what and when and how much.
Yep. I'm going to ask you one thing then, Guy. Have you ever tracked your calories? Have you ever used an app to work out how many calories you're taking in across the day?
I'm going to seem bad now. I've started that on multiple different occasions, but I would say that if you went back and looked at that data, it was not good enough. But I've been doing this a long time, so when it comes to myself, I think I've got a pretty good understanding of what I need and when I need it and how much I need, because I'll usually my training will go like super up and down if I'm not fueling well enough. And if I'm fueling well enough, it's a lot more a neutral plane. So, but no, I don't have any accurate data.
I will throw it to you, Guy. Should we do it for a week? You and I, and we'll compare notes on the podcast.
Ooh,
okay.
That's going to put him under pressure there.
Okay.
No pressure, but let's do it.
Okay, let's do it and rack the training as well. So we have a look at like how much training we've done and how much food intake. That would be really interesting.
I'll set you up. I'll show you how to do it.
Guy will do his biggest training week in 5 years this week.
And eat celery sticks only.
Okay.
You can't go on the IV. You can't go to hospital.
Okay. Well, look, maybe this is something that we actually do. And I think you're onto something. Well done, Tex, there, because I can see him sweating, and I can honestly see that the fear is in his eyes. But do you know what? Okay. The reason I asked that question was not to pick on Guy, is because I maintain that nobody truly knows how many calories they're taking in when training is an energetic exercise. So we require energy to complete a session. We require energy for our basic metabolic health to stay functioning across the course of the day. We actually require energy to digest the food that we're actually eating. We burn energy across the sleep phase of our life as well. We have incidental movement across the day. We have general immune function that needs to be supported by energy. We have all these energetic costs. I could ask any athlete out there in the age group ranks, I could predict roughly what their daily total energy expenditure is based on all those things that I've just talked about, including you can use your power meter, you can make fairly decent estimates with your watch. A bit more difficult in swimming, I can tell you that for free. But I would say 95% of the athletes that I would say, here is how much you needed yesterday energetically. Tell me how much you ate from a calorie perspective. Most people would say, I have no idea. And training is an energetic calculation. If you don't provide the fuel to support all those systems, then you won't adapt to the training. So why do we find it the least desirable thing to measure as age group athletes? And I can tell you why, because it doesn't tell us how fast we're going. It's not a metric that immediately translates into FTP, pace, heart rate, power, speed on the road. It's the least sexy, but it's the most vitally important. And this is why people find it a bit of a pain in the ass to calculate. And they think that appetite should be the thing that confirms that they've eaten enough. And I can tell you now, appetite does not trend in a linear fashion with training load, as this study actually indicates. This was only getting, there are a lot of athletes out there who do 20 hours, age group athletes. They're training a lot more than what some of the participants in the study does. So I think there's an aversion to do it because it doesn't tell us anything about how we're going to perform. Yet ultimately, it is the only thing that's going to tell us whether we're going to perform or not. Because you exist in a deficit. Fitness might improve, but you can't stay healthy enough to train consistently. Fitness doesn't improve, and then you just try to train harder to compensate for it. This energetic calculation that happens on a daily basis is the fundamental constituents of whether we're going to get better over the long run. Mood, sleep, energy, mental health, recovery, all those things are probably being influenced by this energetic calculation that happens on a daily basis for us as triathletes. So I'm sorry I had to subject you to that, team. That's normally what I reserve for every athlete I coach. I just badger them about this energetic calculation. And now that Tex has put Guy into the hot seat, we'll
thanks for that.
Report a week.
Yeah.
Hey,
I have to suffer through this as well.
Yeah, well, all four of us will do it. All four of us will do it. Okay, you're committed to it now.
That's not what I was talking about. I was just talking about I'm having to put up with Guy doing it.
Well, we need to get back into a regular training week for that to happen. But I mean, look, that's true. Anyway, I'm glad that we got that information out there. It wasn't me that suggested this, but Tex, I was surprised he came up with that. I think he just wants to show off exactly how much he eats because he eats a shitload, and the X-ray from last week confirmed it. But on that note, team, we'll leave it for this week. And Guy's got one more thing to contribute.
No, that was just Tex's number one with his eating and gas.
It's not a competition. Anyway, team, I'll let you guys go. Safe travels back from Broome, and we'll catch up next week.
Sounds good.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.